Huh? Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Mac McWilliams, Executive Director of the Oldham County Schools Arts Center. I want to welcome you to Oldham County High School for this public forum to introduce our 3 finalists for Superintendent of Oldham County Schools. The finalists were selected following a rigorous screening process by the Superintendent Screening Committee and the Board of Education members. I want to go ahead and introduce our board members. Our Chair, Joyce Fletcher. Vice Chair Kevin Woosley, Suzanne Hundley, Larry Dodson, and Patrick Keogh. I want to give a special thank you to Ann Corson, our General Counsel, for facilitating this event. There's Ann backstage, but thank you very much to Ann. I'll give just a few words about the forum structure. Each candidate will take the stage one at a time and have a total of 45 minutes to respond to a set of questions from the Board of Education. Each question will have a response time of approximately 3.5 minutes, and this will be followed by closing remarks from the candidate. Due to time limitations, questions will not be taken from the audience. So please take a moment to turn off all cell phones, all electronic devices. You'll notice for safety reasons, exits are in the back and to the side of the stages in case of an emergency. So I'll go ahead now and introduce our first candidate. Brent Deves is currently the Assistant Superintendent for Support Services for the Oldham County Schools. In this role, Mr. Deves oversees 5 operational departments within our district, including personnel and benefits, transportation, technology, student services, and school nutrition. Mr. Deves also oversees the district's site-based decision-making councils and the certified and classified evaluation processes. Prior to his current role, Mr. Deves served the Oldham County Schools as secondary level director, high school principal, assistant and associate principal, and teacher. Mr. Deves is also a level 1 and level 2 certified Orange Frog facilitator. Let's welcome Brent Deves.
Thank you, Matt.
All right.
Appreciate it.
We'll go ahead and get right to it. Your first question, Mr. Deves. High-performing students and accountability are priorities. How will you assess the district's levels of performance, program effectiveness, and teacher effectiveness as the district emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Most definitely. First off, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, the board members for selecting and putting me in the final 3 candidates and allowing me to come back home to Oldham County to hopefully continue my journey in the next step of my educational career. The effectiveness of the school district is marked by much more than just high-stakes standards testing. It's marked by more than just student and staff evaluations. It's all that wrapped together. We have to find and identify ways that we can ensure the success of students when they leave Oldham County, not only when they're here. If we can only guarantee the success for students while they're at Oldham County, I don't think we've met our full expectation of what parents, the community, and what we want for our students beyond graduation. So, looking at the multiple facets of Oldham County expectations is first and foremost, are they getting what they need when they leave? How do we do that? We do it through strong instructional practices, day in and day out in every single classroom. That's our core instructional value. If we're not doing that piece of it, we're going to miss the mark on every other piece. Then there are 5 areas that I believe students should have when they leave here. The first area is they need to be engaged. There needs to be a set of engagement in all activities. There needs to be citizenship provided and citizenship training, perseverance, innovation, and critical thinking. If we can get those 5 qualities instilled in all students when they leave, I believe we've met the expectation of getting kids ready. Now, taking the COVID pandemic into account, I believe students have been much more resilient than what we give them credit for. I believe we as a school district have come together and created an environment where students have been successful this year, much more than many peers around the state and around the country. They have been in person in K through 5, on the hybrid and in full person 6 through 12. Those expectations are expectations that we feel are valued because we value the teacher in the classroom. We value the face-to-face instruction. So when they ask how are we going to come out of the post-pandemic COVID era, I believe we're already coming out of it. And we have to continue to find ways to push because our students are going to be up against students who might have had different experiences during the pandemic on that piece. Thank you.
Next question. Equity is a widely used word in the education field. What is your vision of equity as it applies to the school district? And how will you cultivate buy-in to your vision?
Equity, to me, is so much more than just the buzzword that's been going around education. It's a guarantee that every single student, every staff member and community member feel as they are part of the Oldham County school system's priorities and expectations. Equity for me is making sure that every student and the families involved have the resources and the opportunities to go forth and do what they want within the school district. We have to provide those, and those will be different for each and every one. It might be for one student having involvement in extracurricular or co-curricular. It might be for another student having access to go to the ARVN or the Kappa program. It might be for another student to have resources to help them in reading. It could be for another student to go to early college. We have to find what are those parts of equity that students don't have that might hold them back and find their resources to make sure that we can get them where they want to go. If we're not finding all and providing all the resources, then I think we need to look within ourselves and say, what other resources are out there that we can go find? Because they're changing. Not every student needs the same exact resources. So for students who struggle, we have IEPs. We have resources that those students need that will give them the advantage to go on and do what they want. We also have students that have a 504. We have students that are needing AP and so forth. So the question is not really what's my vision of equity, it's the vision of can we guarantee as a school district, are we going to give every student the resources they need to get to that piece of it? I also believe the other piece of equity is sometimes overlooked, and that is the equity of every single student needs a champion. Every student is a champion. And we have to find ways, if you listen to experts and so forth, when they get involved and have somebody behind them, both in the school, outside the school, or somewhere connected, and they have somebody pushing them with giving them expectations and giving resources, pats on the back, and everything else, that is when I believe you can really start to see how we are going to grow every single student. There is no reason a student in Oldham County cannot succeed in today's age and what we provide. If they don't, I believe it's a failure first on myself and then the organization before anybody else. It cannot be the student's fault. We have to find the ways to get that. In Oldham County, a lot of people say we're not diverse. We do have some diversity. Are we as diverse as some other places? Maybe not. But our diversity comes in multiple different facets. It could be social, economic diversity. It could be racial. It could be ethnic. But the one thing we have in common is we have a school district and a school system that cares for every single kid. We test and we work with every single kid. And our goal is that no student falls between any of those cracks and can have an excuse why they can't get there. If for some reason they don't succeed one way, we find the other avenue. That could be through the alternative school. That could be through another program. If you look at our district, we've been innovative enough to try and find new approaches so that no kid can have an excuse, and we have to put our resources there.
The next question leads well from where you were into certain student populations. Can you describe your experience working with different programs like ELL, at-risk populations, gifted and talented students, and students with disabilities?
I think that's inevitable growing up in Oldham County and growing up in the Oldham County system. From the first day as a teacher, the goal is how do you reach and connect with every student? So if you ask about how have you made connections and how have you worked with students from different backgrounds, I have to go all the way back to my first days teaching and my first days coaching. You make those bonds and relationships with kids. And those bonds and relationships with students are what help you get through the hard days, but what guarantees they get to the end result of what we want. As you go through your educational career as an assistant principal, associate principal, sometimes you start to think about, well, I don't see all the kids. I only see the kids that are getting in trouble. But those students are students that still need relationships and people helping them. So as an assistant principal, I got to work on all facets of that with all different kids, all different backgrounds. When you become the principal and the principal of Oldham County High School, we do have a diverse community. We have a community that we are able to create different projects and clubs. We have an organization and a school district that says, hey, what can we offer you? What new programs can we put in place to make that happen? At the district level and as secondary level director, you get to work with ALEC and the EL program. You get to find ways to help resources there. You then get to go and work with the ECS program and the 504 program. And you get to see how you can take the fringe of your core instruction and really make a difference for students. You find out that, hey, you might have to realign some resources in order to make that happen. So as secondary level director, I got to do that at all middle schools and high schools. It was really my first experience to step out of the halls and the borders and the walls of Oldham County High School and see how other schools do it. And then the cool piece of that for me is taking my talents of building teams and programs and say, how can you share that information and not try to hide it? And sometimes we want to outdo the school down the street or outdo this program. And I think we've really worked hard in the last 15 years of how can we come together as an organization and how can we take all the things we learn that maybe one school's doing a little bit different than the other in terms of our equity, in terms of our diversity, and in terms of these subpopulations and make that go. We have also, I got the fortune to help reboot the Arvin Education Center, which used to be the Career Center, which takes a group of students that sometimes a regular traditional high school setting does not fit for and make that work. Then we said, okay, hey, what we're doing at the Arvin Education Center, let's do that same thing at Kaplan. Let's hit our arts and humanities students, our liberal arts students. And if we can grow that program like we are now in its infancy of its first couple years, we can then take that same concept and say, okay, what's next? We also said, hey, for the groups that don't fit Oldham County High School, let's do a university program. But let's not just do one university program. Let's look at Morehead State. Let's look at Kentucky State. Let's look at what we're doing with University of Louisville. Oh, and JCTC, so that every single student in every single demographic area can find a way and a path if that's what they want to choose. So I believe those, and then in this last one is just working with the food service and transportation departments as well.
We'll go ahead with the next question.
Okay.
Culture is important across a school district of 20 individual school locations. What are the attributes of school district culture, or what are the attributes of school district culture that are important to you? And describe how you will cultivate a cohesive and positive culture across the district.
You know, the first attribute of a school culture and a district culture for me is that each individual school has their own identity. That's a community school, it's a neighborhood school. It's part of the reason people want to come here from other districts next door to us, not saying any names. But with that, we are able to build a community that wraps around its elementary, middle, and high. And they do feed into each other. And so you have an individual culture at a Buckner, a Goshen, a Harmony. And it's cultivated from the parents, from the students, from the staff, and from the administration. And then from there, you step up to the middle school. And they take 2, 3, or 4 elementary schools and make it a middle school culture. And then we then go and say, okay, how do we make it a high school culture? If each individual school has a culture of excellence and success in the classroom, you then can say we have an excellent culture as a district. But if the district is saying, hey, we have to have one culture for every single school and it's got to be exactly the same, I believe we're missing the mark. Because then you don't have the ownership and you don't have the groundswell and the immediacy of its local and community neighborhood, that you miss it that a little bit. Now, what can the district do for the culture? The district can do the first thing. It can have what I would say, a high quality instructional expectation. I believe every parent in this district and who moves here says, what do we want? We want our kids to have the best high quality instruction, because that's what's going to move the mark, no matter if we're talking about subpopulations, the top, the bottom, the middle. It has to start there. The second piece is we have to have efficiency of operations. We have to find ways to level and operate our systems efficiently and effectively. Third, we do have to have the vision of how do we still find ways to move us forward, even when, what Jim Collins would say, we're a good system, but how do we become great? How do we rinse the cottage cheese, per se? So I go back to each individual school builds their culture, the district gives some expectations, and you watch and let them see what they do. Because nothing will be stronger than the boots on the ground, the teacher in the classroom, the students and parents with that teacher, and the administration within the building. So let them run, let them grow. The district will support and be that service organization that gives you the resources you need to make sure you meet all expectations for all students.
Switching gears a little bit, Mr. Deves, when you assess the effectiveness of special education programs, what are some of the criteria you use, and what core values should drive these decisions?
Okay. My first core value in looking at the effectiveness of an ECS program is, first and foremost, what percentage of the students are receiving regular instruction in the regular classroom setting, first and foremost. Where are they getting their core instruction? If their core instruction for the majority, if not almost all students in ECS, is happening at the classroom teacher level first, then I believe we're on our way. If they are being pulled out and not getting on grade level main core instruction, I believe we're right there setting them up for a path that may not be best for every kid, but might still need to be for some. So that's the first thing, is what's our percentage of students getting core instruction? The second piece is are we meeting our expectations and our goals written for individual IEP students? If we go through and have meetings and ARC meetings and we're not moving the needle on students, then we're missing our goal. We're missing our mark on where we're trying to go. So it's through an evaluation process of how effective are we at meeting the goals. And I'm not saying goals that are written to be met. I'm saying goals that are written to push students to meet our higher expectations. Are we then moving and exiting students out of IEP goals, or are we continuing them and making sure that they know how to use those resources to meet the goals, because that's what they need to be successful? I am okay, and I've said it as a high school principal here, I am 100% okay if it takes a student 5 or 6 years to graduate from Oldham County High School, if that's what they need to meet our expectation. Some people will tell you, and some stats will tell you, that you didn't meet your mark when you do that. That you get downgraded because a kid takes an extra 6 months or a year to graduate. I say that's ridiculous. Because if we're trying to meet kids where they are and we're trying to grow kids where they are, then they should be able to graduate with the tools that they need and the time that they need to do that. So the next step is our kids successful after graduation? What's our system for saying, okay, did we get kids through, or do we get kids through with an expectation that they can go do what they want just like every other single kid in this district? If we're just saying we're getting through and they can't go and be a member of the working class, if they can't go to college, if they can't go start their own business, if they can't go work for mom and dad, then we haven't succeeded. So are we doing follow-up checks to see, are the kids going and doing what they want to do? If we can say that with core instruction, are they meeting their goals, and can they do what they want afterwards, then I believe we have a successful program.
The next question, describe a situation in which you disagreed with your current superintendent. How did you respond, and what did you learn from that?
That's kind of a loaded question for me. So one of the situations that I think that I would say I would disagree with Mr. Schultz would be, give me 1 second. I could say it when he was my teacher or when he was my assistant principal, but you would have to put it when he was my superintendent. I think sometimes the biggest struggle I have and disagreement that I have sometimes is I'm a firm believer that our and I'm not saying it's not this way, it's just sometimes I think it needs to be out there more in the front, that our #1 mission and vision should be high quality instruction, and that should be the focus of all of our administrative staff meetings, and should be the focus and what we are preaching from the rooftops from central office to encourage and to help support schools. So I think sometimes we miss the mark on that, and that we go too far this way, too far that way, or something that's really small that I believe we could get in the same vein by attacking core instruction first. And if we can attack a core instruction first, I believe that lifts the tide of all boats, and then all people start to rise, and then you can start picking off the other pieces of that piece of it. So I know it's not a huge disagreement, but I think it's more of a philosophy of, I believe if you go strong with the hard core instructional value every day in the classroom, that will change more than sometimes focusing on some of the small pieces from the district level and then letting the schools go that route. Sorry, Mr. Schultz.
Okay, next, Mr. Deves, can you discuss a federal legislative issue that will impact public education either negatively or positively?
Well, there's several. I think just the last 2 days, Oldham County Schools received some news from the federal regulation that I believe is going to be another positive for Oldham County Schools. Oldham County Schools are going to receive the permission for 1 more year of free breakfast and free lunch for all students district-wide. Because I believe so many of our families in Oldham County during the pandemic have struggled paycheck to paycheck, but still might not meet the threshold to be below or at the poverty line for food. And this federal legislation and federal change has allowed us to take that burden away from parents financially at the cost of $10 to $20 a day or a week for one student. Could be ability to pay an electric bill, could be the ability to use a cell phone, or the ability to take a kid to go get an ice cream cone at Dairy Queen. Those are small things that this legislation is going to do for the positive. So I know some people are going to say, well, how's that going to happen? We're going to be able to do that, provide that food, and I'm excited about it. We've only had 2 schools that have been what they call CEP schools in our district, and this will put everybody on it just like this year, and I believe financially help families and students not to have that. It reduces the stress and the burden for students who come to school to know that they're going to get that meal and it's always there for them. So I think that's the positive. That's one positive of several. I do think we still have to wait for the current administration to figure some stuff out. I'm also a firm believer that sometimes we just need to let districts and schools do what districts and schools do, and sometimes stay out of the way. But we'll wait and see and cross those battles when more of them come our way. So,
Yeah, we'll move on. Next one, with the increasing focus on academic performance, what is the importance of related arts classes, and do you see the role of related arts classes in education changing in the future? I promise I didn't write this one, but I hope you have the right answer.
give Mac money. I'm going to go back first. I hate to say I'm keep going back to Oldham County Schools, Oldham County High School. My first year of principal, we started the initiative to, hey, we need to change from block scheduling and go back to period scheduling. And one of the driving factors for that was we felt like block scheduling was hurting our related arts and our liberal arts classes because they weren't being able to meet every day all year long. And if they did meet every day all year long, it took an additional opportunity away from kids who couldn't go and do something else because they now only had 3 classes on that block schedule. So I'm going to say that's my first time saying in a leadership role that we need to find a way to value the arts and humanities. From there, it is what other opportunities in the school system can we provide to make sure that those happen? We do not need every kid to get a 36 on the ACT. We don't need every single student to be able to go and draw or paint a Mona Lisa. But you know what? If any one kid wants to go get a 36 on the ACT or draw the Mona Lisa, we should give them the ability to go do that. And if you don't have those opportunities, then you've missed the boat again of trying to get every kid where they want to go after graduation. In the related arts field, you're going to have to kind of go sometimes on the ebb and flow of what students want and student choice. There are going to be years that are going to be heavier in the drama department than there is in the creative writing or in the AV field. But you have to find what those are and ask the kids, and then you have to program and look at how can you adjust your programming to meet the needs of those kids at that time. One of the number one, or I'm not going to say one of the number one, I'm going to say one of the top, I'm going to say 2 or 3 pieces of evidence that shows that kids are going to be successful are the connections they make beyond the academic classroom. We have to provide those. It doesn't matter what Brent Deves likes. It doesn't matter if Mac likes violin more than band and concert band. It's what do the kids want? Parents, I'm sorry, it's not always what you want either. What do those kids want? What do they want to explore? And if they want to do concert band this year and choir next year, and then ag the next year, we got to give them those opportunities. You can't take them away, and you can't stifle those. The next piece for me is, came back in, I talked to Mac. When Mac and I, about 4 years ago, we said, we're going to cause a problem for the county real quick. We're going to start middle school violin lessons, and we're going to provide them after school so there's nobody can say we're taking time away. But guess what? We knew it 3 years ago. When we started it, it would cause an issue at the high school because kids would need somewhere to go and do that because we don't have that orchestra. So what do? We started Kappa. And we've grown it, and we will continue to grow it because it gives other opportunities in dance and in choir and in string instruments that we don't have or technical theater.
Great. And next, how will you determine how this district will return to business as usual in the fall? And given the fact that many districts lag behind Oldham to return to class in person.
You know, Mac, the one thing I love about education, business as usual never happens on a daily basis. If you think you're going to walk into a classroom or walk into a school on any given day and say, we're going to do business as usual, you've missed the mark. Because we're dealing with kids, and we're dealing with passionate parents who love their kids, and they want what's best for their kids. So to me, this is an opportunity to look at some things differently and say, how can we grow out of it? How can Oldham County take lemons and turn them into lemonade? I have a firm belief that I want to make sure that Oldham County Schools is that school system, no matter if it's academically, athletically, and the liberal arts, that it turns people's heads when we walk in the door. When we walk in somewhere, or we show up, or we talk about Oldham County, I want people to turn their head, and I want us to walk in with their heads held high. So how are we going to come out of the pandemic? And how are we going to ensure that we return to business to normal? Business isn't going to be normal. It never has been normal for us. Why? Because we've had leaders in the past that have said, pony up, pull up your big boy pants, and make this system work. Make it the best it can be so people will move here and continue to grow. So I'm not worried about what happened in the past. I want to learn from it and grow, but how are we going to get out of it? We're going to keep doing what we do every day. We're going to put one foot in front of the other. We're going to work our tails off. We're going to work harder than every single person around us, and we're going to have the best teachers in the seats in front of the kids teaching. And I'm going to put our group and our teachers and our administrators in front of any district, and I'll say, let's go. If we need to have a duel, we will win, because I believe in them that much. Talking to friends and talking to families about VLA, they were so impressed, I think, with what the teachers did outside of the normal classroom. And when we say that was a fraction of what we can do when we have kids in class, that's a testament to who we have. That's a testament to who we are. That's a testament to our expectations and our morals and our values built within this community and built within the school system. So I'm not too worried about what the others are going to do post-pandemic. I'm worried about what we're going to do, and I can tell you what my expectation would be. We're going to hit the ground running, and we're not going to look back. We're going to find ways that kids can still be in class. We're going to find ways that if there's something that does come up, we're going to do VLA 4.0. Sorry, Dr. Smith. We've done 1, 2, and 3.0. But if they kick us out of school, by golly, we'll find a better way to do VLA if we have to. That hopefully won't happen. But you can't sit back and say, oh, now we can't do what we need to, because the time doesn't stop ticking for some kids. Kids are graduating. Kids are going out. And I want them to have the upper hand for the other schools that didn't go to in-person. I want our group to go in person and to say, this is why we did it, and you want to hire me, you want to take me in your school because I'm an Oldham County kid.
Switching gears a little bit more. Can you please share a recent example where you had to advocate for the benefit of students against the stronger voices of staff or community?
So when do we have to advocate for students against strong voice or opposition? I'm going to use the example of my life the last 3 weeks, the last week, no, I'm going to say the last 2 weeks of December and the first 2 weeks of January. When the state said, hey, you can go back to athletics. And we know people love athletics. But you know what this district did? This district said, yeah, we want to go back to athletics, but we want to ensure instruction happens first in the classroom. So we took a pause. We took an additional week and a half pause in our winter sports. And I'm going to tell you, every parent got a phone call back. We talked to them. And we explained our philosophy. Did we always agree? No. We agreed to disagree. But the expectation was that we're still going to get a full season in, and we're going to keep kids in classrooms learning. And we did it against opposition. We did it against phone calls. And we did it for what I believe was the betterment of all students, not just a core group of students. And when you look back now, and I'm going to be a little biased, I know, when I look back now and look at the success of our winter sports seasons, we had a team go to Rupp. We had 2 teams in the regional finals. We had teams in girls basketball. We had state wrestlers. We had programs that kids still got to participate in, stay healthy in, and we did our number one goal. We kept kids in class, we kept learning, and we did it, and we're all better for it, in my opinion. So I believe it's a time that the community and some people would say, hey, you should have done A. We stuck with B. And I think the payoff for me was, like I said, we stayed in instruction, and that's what our core value has to be. That's a lot coming from a sports guy.
That's good. As superintendent, how would you ensure a vertically and horizontally articulated curriculum while preserving opportunities for creativity of individual teachers?
I like the word we say as superintendent. I think sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be. I think sometimes we put so much emphasis on that we get lost in the weeds. It's going to be hard work, but I think you can do it with 3 simple pieces. I'm going to start with the center, which is our core instructional practice, our core instruction. And from that, there are 3 areas that make that work. The first area of that piece is exceptional classroom instruction. We have to provide the best classroom instruction for every kid every single day. We have the best teachers. We need to equip the best teachers. We need to train the best teachers, and we need to retain the best teachers. You can then take strong, exceptional instructional practices and pair it with a viable and reliable curriculum that is rigorous and pushes students. So now you have the best teachers teaching with the best practices, now using the best instruction, or the best rigorous curriculum that's viable, that's research-based. So now you take the best practice, the best viable curriculum, and then you use data and evidence in multiple different facets to adjust along the way. And it becomes a cycle that goes around that core instructional practice. Best teaching, best resource practices, what data is proven we're doing it right or wrong, adjust, go again. Nobody walks in and says, I'm going to teach a bad day today so that I can reteach again. No, you come in and you do your best, and when it's not your best, you go and you retool, you ask your partner, you ask somebody in the hallway, you ask somebody in the district, and you redo it again in a different manner. I think if you take those 3 facets all around the instructional core, you're going to do that piece of where I say rising tide lifts all boats. That is the same for elementary, middle, and high. Those 3 things don't change. Now, what might change is where do you introduce a topic? Where do you understand a topic? And where do you master a topic? But if you use those 3 core values around your instructional core, I don't think you're going to miss the mark. And I think you've done that both horizontally and vertically K-12. Or P16 if you put the preschool and our YATP program in there. The next piece of that is when you put something like that in place, you have to evaluate it, monitor it, and hold everybody accountable to it. And that's what the district can do by providing the resources and helping to make sure that it happens at each and every building.
A couple more questions to go. What are the most important components of a successful home and school partnership?
Two-way communication. Schools listening to the community, the parents, and the kids. Schools have to listen. We have to open up our ears. We can't be closed-minded. The parents who called about athletics, the parent who calls about their kid who gets in trouble, you know what they are? They're the most important, strongest advocate for their student or daughter. We might not be on the same page, but they are not coming from an area that they think that they are wrong. We might have to work on answers and work on solutions, but you can never fault a parent for doing what they think's right for their kid. It might take time to educate both sides. It might take time to work out and get to the solution that we all can work with, live with, and agree on. But they're coming with the understanding that they're trying to do what's best for their kid. So that's number one. I think the schools have to listen. Number two, we have to become better communicators and find different ways to communicate. It can't be a one-stop shop. It can't be, come find the information on our website. It can't be, I'm just going to send out an email. Because if we send out an email, it only goes to families within the district. Only 35 or 40% of families have kids in the school system, but we're still a community. So we got to find ways to reach that. Maybe we could use those nice new flashy billboards, Judge Vogel, if we could maybe put some stuff in there. I don't know the rules about it, but hey, there's another way. Communication has to be from the school, from the teacher, then from the district as well. But here's the thing we learned real quick when we got all happy with Infinite Campus and robocalls. What do we all do when we get a robocall? Click. So we got to make sure it's the right information we're pushing out. Sometimes it's targeted and sometimes it needs to be big blast. Sometimes you need to use the media. Sometimes we need to grow our own media through our students maybe. But it's two-way communication with, I believe, the schools being listeners first, not being reactionary, being proactive. If we can do that, I think we hit the mark. The other piece is we need to make sure that we are getting involved and having students involved in multiple different activities. It goes back to, why are we who we are? It's awesome when you drive by here on a Saturday morning and you got softball, soccer, you have all the activities going on. We are still a community school. When you go to other schools around the state, you don't see big fans in the stands. You don't see student sections doing ozone and blackouts in the black hole and the kids with the drums at South High doing their dances and stuff. You don't see that at all schools. Why? Because we involve the community, involve the students, and we know that's what makes a difference. That's, I believe, what we have to do and continue to do and do it better than anybody else.
The final question from the Board of Education. What experience have you had working with a diverse community, including different socioeconomic and educational levels, cultures, races, ethnicities, and expressions of gender?
Yeah. I think, as you guys know, I'm Oldham County through and through. Born just straight down the street, moved here when I was about 1, and haven't left. So I go back to my experience is the Oldham County experience. It's the experience we want our kids and our families to have. It's the experience I want my 2 kids in the Oldham County school system to have. So how have I worked with diverse and different organizations? I've been fortunate enough the last 5 years to work on the Metro United Way Advisory Council for Oldham County, trying to find ways to raise and find revenues and resources to help different organizations in Oldham County that do good for Oldham Countyans. I was fortunate enough the last 1.5 years to work with the Oldham County Court, Fiscal Court, and Metro United Way in a partnership to do some COVID relief funds, going out and seeing how can we help where people need help. Within Oldham County schools, and what we're doing at Oldham County High School when I was a principal here, it was to make sure that every kid had that champion. I don't care what zip code you live in. I don't care if you're on the north side, the south side, the east side. I think sometimes people would fault me for saying I had a passion for kids from Westport. I would take transfers. If you're a district transfer from any school, come here, we would not deny you. Because I have a belief that any kid that walks through your door, it's our goal as educators to get them to walk out at graduation. Sometimes to a fault, but I'm never going to give up on a kid. So then we talk about, okay, what do you do with diverse communities and minorities? For me, it was making connections. It was through sports. It was through hallway conversations. It was through somebody who they could say, hey, I just want to talk and listen. What can we do to make it better? The hardest part for me, I probably don't have time to tell a story, so I won't tell that one, was sometimes not knowing what kids are going through and truly not being able to understand that is going and finding the community members that can help explain that. Going and talking to prominent community leaders within the church, within the court system, who could say, hey, think of it from this perspective. Open your eyes. And then to give the kids the outlet to come in and have those conversations. But the idea was that every single one of those kids had a champion and was getting them to where they need to be. Finding them the resources and providing the resources that got them to where they want to go. If we couldn't do that, then we were in trouble. And I truly feel like we provided that for students both at the school and then we're continuing to do that now at the district level.
Thank you, Mr. Deves. And now you'll have a moment for some closing remarks if you like.
Awesome. I think my closing remarks come from a place of passion, a place of love for this place. I wouldn't be here without the school system. It made me who I am. I got chills walking back in here tonight because it felt like the first day of opening school. And I hope I have that feeling again if I have to get to do the first day of being superintendent. I'm not leaving. I'm here for a system that gave me so much. I'm here to make sure the system has what I want my kids to have. I'm here that the system has what your kids want to have and what you came here to want to work in. I am very passionate about Oldham County. It is home away from home. It's the best place to live, I guess, now if you listen and see what Wall Street Journal said. Those tracks going through LaGrange, the riverboats on Westport, Creasy Mayhem Park in Goshen, and all the other places mean something to people. People come back. I'm here to say I think I can add a little bit more with a team that we build to continue to make Oldham County the place we all want it to be. I hope that you guys believe in that and see that and have seen that from me for 23 years in Oldham County. I didn't come as the smartest kid from school. I had to overcome an IEP, had to overcome other things, but you know what? I had people who believed in me. That's why I'm here today. I want to believe in kids so that kids can go do what I got to do. And I think it's because of Oldham County. So, thank you.
We'll resume at 6:55 with our next candidate.
No, you're okay. If you don't mind sitting in the light, if you want to, and then Mac will introduce you, and then let me check if the questions are.
Oh, the lights.
You check the questions. I'm gonna get in the clock.
Okay.
Is currently an assistant superintendent with the Franklin County Schools. In this role, she oversees all aspects of instruction, assessment processes, and district curriculum alignment. Ms. Six also serves as the point of contact for Reading Recovery and Reading Recovery teacher leader programming, gifting talented budgeting and programs, and SBDM council training. She facilitates the work of instructional coaches, participants, district strategic planning processes, and district improvement planning, organizes professional development, and provides coaching for a variety of district and school staff. Ms. Six has previous experience at the K-12 Director of Curriculum, Instruction and Assessment for Franklin County Schools. Pardon me, I forgot my glasses, but I'm getting through it, I think. Reading First coordinator with the Kentucky Department of Education and Franklin County Schools, State Reading First coach with Kentucky State University, instructional specialist, director of instructional support, and primary literacy consultant. She started her career as a primary teacher in Martin County Schools. Let's introduce Charlotte Six. Thank you.
Good evening.
And
I'll
we'll
try to
begin.
get adjusted to the lights and,
We'll begin with our first question.
okay.
High-performing students and accountability are priorities. How will you assess the district's levels of performance, program effectiveness, and teacher effectiveness as the district emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I think the COVID pandemic will be one of the greatest challenges of our era as educators. And I'm excited about moving past the pandemic, as I know everyone is. Where we'll begin is in the classrooms. And we'll take a look at instruction. Our data is 2 years old at this point, except for those classroom assessments. And so I know schools are working hard in professional learning communities to still know their students, and we are being forced to take tests based on the USDE's decision to make us take those tests this year. So we'll have those results later, but I think it's just collecting all the data we can, getting in the classrooms, being visible. I, as superintendent, would work very hard to build relationships with principals because they are the folks leading those schools and leading the teachers. And so I think it's just going to be there'll be a lot of listening and learning in the first 3 months and listening past that point, but we just need to take in all the information we can, assess where we are, and move forward.
And the next question, equity is a widely used word in the education field. What is your vision of equity as it applies to a school district? And how will you cultivate buy-in on your vision?
Well, I'm excited to hear about the work in Oldham County Schools. I know you've been doing some diversity work through your coalition. And so I know that you are collecting data now to move forward. You know, equity is not about being equal. It's about giving every student what they need to be successful. And so my hope for Oldham County schools and students in those schools is that every child will feel like they belong. They don't have to do something to belong. That they go to school each day with a smile on their face and know that everyone there is excited to see them. We greet them with a smile. Our parents and families are welcome in the buildings, and that we will work to make sure that they can achieve success. It is a widely used word, and I think it looks differently in every district. So we need to take into consideration the demographics in Oldham County and apply that 100% rule. And the 100% rule is every child will do X, Y, Z. 100% of children will do X, Y, Z. And when I'm asked, is that realistic? It seems daunting, but I always push back and say, what do we need to do to make that happen? How can we achieve success with every student in this district? And so that's what I'd want for Oldham County Schools.
Can you describe your experience working with different programs like ELL, at-risk populations, gifted and talented students, and students with disabilities?
Yes, thank you. Well, I attended school in Martin County, Kentucky. I was a student in a high poverty area. Lyndon B. Johnson first declared his war on poverty in 1964. on the front steps of a porch in Martin County. And so I've gone to school with kids who don't have a lot, and I actually went to college and came back and taught there for several years. And so I've taught in a 99% free and reduced lunch school. I know those kids and what they need, and I know about how we engage students with poverty in mind. I understand that Oldham County may have a lower free and reduced lunch rate, but you still have kids who struggle. And that's one of the things I told the board when we interviewed a couple weeks ago. I know that people call Oldham County the Disney World of the school districts, and you may not know that, but they do. And so you get less resources than most districts, but you still have struggling students. And what that requires are strong teachers who know how to respond in the classroom. Good instruction is good instruction. It's good for all kids. So when we think about these different populations, like EL learners, English learners, I currently oversee our federal Title III program in Franklin County. That population is growing, and we're working with teachers, providing training to help them understand how to meet student needs in the classroom. Gifted and talented students, I understand you've expanded the gifted and talented programming in Oldham County schools, and I think that's amazing. I want the best for every student here. So I also have supervised gifted and talented students in my current role. And students with disabilities, that's currently under my supervision as well. And one thing I'd like to share with you that's been successful, because I have noticed all 3 high schools, I believe, would be 5-star schools. And they took away a star because of data related to students with special needs. And so what I would propose we do is sit down and look at these students individually. You may already do that, but this is a practice we've tried at one of our local high schools. And we look at those students individually, and we try to pinpoint what is the need of this child. And so I'm hopeful I could participate in those types of meetings with leadership, with teachers, and that we try to figure out what it would take to move students forward. So I think I took care of all the groups in that question, but I get excited around those. I have 2 seconds.
Your next one. Culture is important across a school district of 20 individual school locations. What are the attributes of school district culture that are important to you? And describe how you will cultivate a cohesive and positive culture across the district.
Well, climate is our mood and culture is our lifestyle. And, you know, in my video that I submitted for the application, one of the tasks assigned, I said that I worked in an elementary school that was the Oldham County of Franklin County. And so I knew I took over for a great leader and had to protect that culture and climate so we could move forward. They say culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it doesn't matter how great your strategies are. If people are not happy, if the mood in the building doesn't feel good, your kids don't want to be there either. And so I would work to protect the culture, to build the culture where it's needed. And I think a leader does that by being authentic and being open and honest and transparent. And I believe in the power of relationships. I know that none of us can do this job alone. And so we need each other. And we want to model that for kids, what collaboration looks like. So I just want to assure board members and parents and community members and all the employees here tonight that culture and climate would be a top priority for me. And I can't wait to meet folks and see where we are in respect to the culture and climate.
Thank you. When you assess the effectiveness of special education programs, what are some of the criteria you use? And what core values should drive these decisions?
When I think about special education programs, first let me say I'm people over programs. There are so many variables with programs. I think we always need to consider what are the goals for the students, what's the implementation? Are we implementing programs with fidelity? What's the cost effectiveness of the program? I think you have to take into account all of those factors when you're looking at programs for special education. And if you might mean something different by this question, but special education programs, what are some of the criteria? So I answered that, check. What core values should drive these decisions? Again, back to the individualized focus on each child. You know, it may be that we have some students in a particular class, they don't use their accommodations. So how do we teach them to use their accommodations and ask for those accommodations? My core value about special education would be I believe each and every child can be successful. And so I use that when making decisions. It drives the work. And I expect they will be successful. Special education levels that playing field for our kids. And we need to make sure that they use the tools that we give them to succeed.
Ms. Six, can you describe a situation in which you disagreed with your current superintendent? How'd you respond, and what did you learn from that?
Oh my goodness. I might need to phone a friend. Can we pass and come back to that? I don't know. Okay, let me get serious here. Okay, I'll give an example. He won't mind this either. You know, we received quite a bit of ESSER's funding, more than Oldham County received. And the first round, the CARES funding, went for, we allocated it towards all of those, the PPE, the masks, the cleaning supplies, all those things that we needed. We needed to make sure that our buildings were clean and that folks were protected. And I just remember when we got the second set of funds, I was kind of like, we're going to buy more masks? And he said, no, 85% of this goes to learning loss. And he's been wonderful with the second round and the third round. But, I understand his decision for allocating the first round of funds to those things we needed to get the buildings up and running and to get kids back in school. But I was a little bit not happy about things we needed for learning as well. And so he and I talked that out, and it's all good now. But, I'll be talking about it again tomorrow probably.
Please discuss a federal legislative issue that will impact public education either negatively or positively.
I think about, I'm trying to think about an issue, but one that would be applicable to Oldham County as well. I think about Title I situations, and I know you have a couple Title I schools. I guess I would go for this question, I would think about the testing that we're currently enduring when it's been such a year. It's It's been hard on these kids, it's been hard on educators, and I don't agree that they would not waive the state testing for accountability purposes, or they're waiving accountability purposes, but still requiring us to test in the last 14 days of school. And so I have a problem with that, and clearly I didn't get my way. So I think sometimes they impose requirements on states and districts, and they are so far removed from being in schools and districts in our state. So that would be probably what I would share.
Thank you. Going to the next question. With the increasing focus on academic performance, what is the importance of related arts classes? And what do you see the role of related arts in education? And do you see the role of related arts in education changing in the future?
Well, I think arts education is part of the whole child education. And I love that Oldham County has a Center for the Performing Arts, and am excited to hear it's been here for 12 years, and so it's established. The arts, those types of things, those classes are the reasons kids come to school. They don't all come for content classes. That doesn't get them out of bed in the morning. So sometimes that's what will get them here. And I think it's just as important to learn the things they learn in those classes and courses as it is in content courses. I mean, dedication to the arts teaches, dedication, diligence, drive. There are all kinds of things that related arts programming does for kids, and I believe in it, and it's just part of it for me.
Let's move on to the next one. How will you determine how this district will return to business as usual in the fall, given that many districts lag behind Oldham in returning to class in person?
Well, we were watching, and you led the way. We were a little bit later coming back to school. I think your elementary kids came back before anyone. I think we're ready to come back. Of course, you need to listen to the voices of our employees, the voices of our parents and community. But I think we've come back without incident, and I'm just hoping August is business as usual.
Thank you. Please share a recent example where you had to advocate for the benefit of students, even against the stronger voices of staff or community.
I'll use one of our high schools as an example. We received some funds for improvement for English learners, and we've discovered that some of our teachers might need some assistance in providing appropriate accommodations for English learners. And so part of the funding request was to hire an accommodations instructional coach. And I'm not sure instructional coaching is seen as valued as it could be. I think they need to hire the right person, and so that's something we're working with them to hire right now. But it's trying to talk to others about the benefit to students and how it might be a change from something that they're used to doing. We look at things differently to try to come up with new ways of doing something, and change is tough for some. But it really depends on relationships. And so if you have relationships with people at the school level, people are more willing to listen and take each other's perspectives into consideration, and that's important. So I think anytime that there are stronger voices in the staff, with the community example, that it just takes listening and modeling and respectful civil discourse to focus on a solution.
Thank you. A couple more to go. As superintendent, how would you ensure a vertically and horizontally articulated curriculum while preserving opportunities for creativity of individual teachers?
This is a great question. It's one of the questions I have about the curriculum here. I am curious what that work looks like in an ongoing manner. And so I fully understand experts designing curriculum, but how do we continually revise the curriculum in professional learning communities so that it's a working document and teachers see it as a working document that's of use to them? So I would envision some vertical and horizontal conversations that need to take place, and just some inquiry into what they look like, and then how are we going to address recovery? What will the maps look like as we try to recover learning loss, and what do we do there? So that's a thought.
What do you feel are the most important components of a successful home and school partnership?
I think, well, first, let me say to parents who are here and watching on screen, you are the number one determinant of your child's success. And I value that. Communication can't just be one way from the school to the parents. You know, you all know this. We need to have two-way communication and invite volunteers and all those things to engage the community. And I think that you have a very strong parent support network. I think that we just need to look for ways that we can continue growing that network of engaged parents and appreciate the relationship, because it's powerful.
Thank you. This is the last question from our Board of Education. What experience have you had working with a diverse community, including different socioeconomic and educational levels, cultures, races, ethnicities, and expressions of gender?
Well, I mentioned earlier, you know, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky in probably one of the poorest counties in Kentucky, and was educated in Ohio and in Eastern Kentucky. So, you know, I've been exposed to those diverse elements. In Frankfort, you know, we're probably 60% free and reduced lunch. We have some diversity. Gender expression, we do have students currently who are working through gender expression, and we are trying to educate and provide the resources they may need in Franklin County. And so what I would say is that over the last year, I've worked hard to reflect and become more self-aware. And I think that's important. We have to examine our own implicit bias and try to grow from that. And each and every child deserves to be successful. And I believe that strongly. And so this question, what experience have I had in working with all kinds of folks? I've had some experience. It's probably not been a lot of experience in my 31 years, but I'm open to growing and learning with everyone else and know that the work's important. We probably need to consider some equity policies if we don't have those at this time, and work to be the best for every child.
Thank you, Ms. Six. Now you have the opportunity for some final remarks, if you wish.
Okay, final remarks. What I'd like to share with everyone is that my personal mission would be that every child would be positively impacted because I've been given the opportunity to serve in this district. And the things I would ask of our employees would be that each and every student is known by name, strength, and need. And that when they graduate, they're equipped to write their own life stories, that they can navigate their success and make the world a better place. And so when I think about mission vision work, that's where we begin. Of course, we want to maintain or exceed traditions of excellence in Oldham County schools. That is what you're known for. I would want to reduce, if not eliminate, opportunity gaps, and I would want to increase the cultural competencies of all. And I'd work really hard to build relationships with everyone. So I wish you luck. I thank you for inviting me tonight. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. I survived. It's over.
Thank you, Ms. Six.
Thank you.
We'll reconvene in about 5 minutes with our final candidate.
Okay, we're going to resume with our third and final candidate for superintendent. Jason Radford is currently an assistant superintendent with Boone County Schools. He leads the Boone County Schools Office of School and System Improvement, which provides equitable, accessible, rigorous, and relevant learning opportunities to all students. In his current role, Dr. Radford provides schools with evidence-based strategies to support learning and ensures that schools integrate social, emotional, and academic needs into instructional design, school management, and accelerated improvement practices. He is responsible for maintaining alignment to district goals and programs that ensure system effectiveness. Prior to this position, Dr. Radford served as a national school leadership coach and worked for the Kentucky Department of Education as a district manager and acting director for Title I, as well as an educational recovery leader. At the school level, Dr. Radford has served as a teacher, lead teacher, principal, assistant DPP, and high school principal. Let's welcome Jason Radford.
Thank you very much.
And our first question, Dr. Radford, high-performing students and accountability are priorities. How will you assess the district's levels of performance, program effectiveness, and teacher effectiveness as the district emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you, and thank you to the Oldham County Board of Education for allowing me to be here, and it's great to be with everyone in the audience tonight. Thank you so much. Sure, with high-performing students and programs and assessing effectiveness, for me as superintendent, if I were fortunate to be in this role, I'd want to know, or really want to establish a baseline of where we are as a district on the current programs that are happening. What data are we collecting? So part of the 100-day plan I shared with the Board of Education is meeting with those different groups of stakeholders to understand what's happening in the district, and also to be able to understand context and connect with our leaders in the district, principals within our schools, and also to talk with our teachers, to establish advisory councils and to be able to meet with people and to have a really good understanding. I think one of the things, if you're familiar with Stephen Covey, he talks about you want to seek first to understand before you want to be understood. And you connect that with voice and also with data. Other thing I'd like to add is that if there are new programs that we're putting in place, you also want to identify part of that design is to understand how you measure success before you ever implement. And so it's also understanding the habits and routines in the district to assess those programs.
Thank you. Equity is a widely used word in the education field. What is your vision of equity as it applies to a school district, and how will you cultivate buy-in to your vision?
One of the things when I talked with interviewed with the board, I presented a vision. It's really a passion that I have, and that is to provide world-class learning opportunities for all students that's rigorous, equitable, accessible, and relevant. Equity has certainly been a major tenet across our state, across our country, in schools and in school districts. Equity really, to me, is about just connecting and elevating with our people, with the community, with our staff, with our students. I think equity really speaks to how do we add value and voice, and just really understanding the needs. I think the other piece, though, is when decisions are made, I think this also relates back to question one. Whenever you're looking at programs and program effectiveness and the needs of our schools and the needs of the district, it's really important that we just look through the lens of equity, because equal just means really fair, but equity is what we need to be successful. And that's just through connections. That's through relationships. I think selling that vision, which I can appreciate the question very much, is really about, again, connecting with people. Education is a people business, and being able to just to connect with others and knowing what the needs are when you connect, when you allow or really understand what the voice of our stakeholders, community, teachers, district leaders, principals, and data, we can really sell the vision that we need to address the needs across our community and school district.
Describe your experience working with different programs like ELL, at-risk populations, gifted and talented students, and students with disabilities.
I probably jumped ahead a little bit with my previous response in terms of what I shared with the Board of Education in terms of the vision and the passion that I have, which speaks to rigor, equity, access, and relevance. Some work that I previously have done or are currently doing in Boone County really speaks to our ELL population. We have worked tremendously hard to really improve our system of support, which gets into training, access, instructional resources for our students so that we can close those learning gaps for our EL students, just in the classroom. At-risk populations, students with disabilities, gifted and talented students, I really think that goes back to one of the passions and one of the things that I'm currently working on and would want to bring to the Oldham County Schools is really 4 key commitments in our classroom. It's really interesting. I appreciate it so much looking at the district website because they directly align with the passion, the vision, and my own philosophy of grade level tasks, strong instruction, student engagement, and high expectations. Those are clearly evident here in Oldham County. When we speak to our special populations, how can we continue to grow and improve? And I think that is really, again, looking at our data and connecting with our stakeholders in our schools and within the district.
Thank you. Culture is important across a school district of 20 individual school locations. What are the attributes of school district culture that are important to you? And describe how you will cultivate a cohesive and positive culture across our district.
Certainly, culture eats strategy for breakfast any day of the week. It's so, so important. And I think, people really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you investing in the community, being visible and accessible. I love kids and I care about people. And I think part of that really speaks to, and what I mean by that is celebrate success. That goes such a long way. Being able to be in classrooms, be in school buildings, be in the community, and really connecting with others and say, just a pat on the back. That goes such a long way. In addition to that, the attributes, one of the other things that really sticks out to me as I share with our board or with the Board of Education, the values that I have. The values that I bring from my leadership perspective are really just to inspire, to listen to others, to develop our leaders, to develop everyone as leaders, and to meet their own aspirations as professional educators, promote well-being, innovation. And by the way, Oldham County has certainly done a great job with being innovative with the programs and opportunities you currently have within the district for students. We want to act and empower our people, and we want to advance accountability so that way we can continue to grow. So to me, culture goes back to the things that as leaders that what we value as a district. And again, I think part of coming in would be, I go back to the Covey example, that seek first to understand before I want to be understood. And that's understanding what we need to do to move forward and elevating that voice.
Thanks, Dr. Redford. When you assess the effectiveness of special education programs, what are some of the criteria you use, and what core values should drive the decisions you make?
First, I think if it's from a special education perspective for students with disabilities, it really goes back to what's happening in core instruction and teaching and learning. Our students with disabilities is an area that I see from the data that I can be able to observe and analyze that's available to me on district and state websites is an area for growth within Oldham County. I think that really goes back to working with the special ed director, working with the principals, and working with certainly how we can better support students. It may be something that things are currently really in place, and so we need to further support by training, by analyzing data to drive next steps. In my experience, and everywhere that I've been, I just use a simple, I grew up on a dairy farm, and my grandfather used to teach me, just keep it simple, stupid, and how we assess and evaluate programs. And I think this goes back to question number one of what does the data tell us? What's the opportunities to celebrate? What's the opportunities for improvement, and identify those next steps? And this doesn't happen individually. This cannot fall on the shoulders of the superintendent. It is done by team. And you all promote Team Oldham here within the community, as I see and look at Twitter and look on the district website. I think that is how we approach and solve any problem, is through team and being able to remove barriers so that our teachers can be successful. Our teachers in any school system are so vitally important because they work and touch our students every day, in addition to support staff across our district. I'm getting off track a little bit, but core values really should speak to, I think, again, understanding. In the 100-day plan that I submitted and shared with the Board of Education is really talking, part of that is really talking and listening to others about and listening for what does Oldham County value, in addition to what's posted, what I see on the website, to really drive our decisions, because our values should drive our decisions in supporting all students.
Describe for us a situation in which you disagreed with your current superintendent. How'd you respond, and what'd you learn from it?
That's a good question. We were in the midst of supporting a particular school within our district in the last 2 years ago. And our superintendent had a vision and wanted to take particular steps in how we staffed and supported a school, this particular school, for support going into the new year. I did not agree with a couple of those strategies or a couple of pieces for a couple of different reasons, because I felt like that I knew the context and understood what would be most beneficial. And so we did not agree to on those particular. There were one or two decisions, and so we really just sat down, and we talked about that as professional educators in terms of me to the superintendent. But at the end of the day, we agreed that we were on the same page. When he heard my voice, he heard me, and I listened to what he had to say. He was the boss. However, there was mutual respect and conversation when we talked about the needs. And so then we were able to work through and resolve one particular issue, and we really kind of co-designed and then worked with our stakeholders to make that decision. It was a little stressful. It was tense when you're talking about supporting students, and when you have that passion and that drive to support everyone, because kids' lives and their learning is at stake, that can get really heated and become very passionate. But at the end of the day, we were all on the same team. I think, again, it goes back to team and how we can support each other. And that's what we did.
Dr. Radford, discuss a federal legislative issue that will impact public education, either negatively or positively.
Well, in the world that I currently live in, with the elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund, which is, I refer to that as COVID relief monies, that is currently a big project that I have within our school district. And what I mean, and the reason I bring that up is because at an unprecedented level, I'm not sure the monies that have been, I'm somewhat familiar, the funds have been awarded to Oldham County, but on a big scale, it's on an unprecedented level, the federal government is distributing funds to schools and districts at a rate that is it's rare and it's so fast. For example, we are just in the midst in Boone County, this is one of the projects that I oversee, we're just finalizing our plan for the second round of funds. And we've just been notified in the last few weeks that we're getting a third round. So, my concern would be is the impact that has from the federal government to the state and to the local level of support. Certainly, there could be lots of advocacy because of, and the impact that may have on we don't know the impact they may have on the SEEK formula, because as property values go up, your SEEK dollars go down. And so I'm sure I know that the Board of Education is very well aware of that, and folks in the audience as well. So that is a concern. It keeps me up at night in my current role. And so I had a dream the other night. Someone misspelled one of those acronyms. And we have so many acronyms in education and working with our schools and across the state and federal government. So yes, and funding is always at the heart of concern. So we want to advocate for what's best for our students and that they have what they need and that school districts are able to support that need. No one wants to say no. Usually it comes down to two things, time or money. And funds are certainly something to keep a close eye on as we progress.
Thank you.
One last point I would say is, as the last legislative session, you could tell by watching what legislators are saying and what's coming out of Frankfurt in the General Assembly was some decisions or impact they were making were based upon these federal funds or what we may or may not provide. And that's a very big deal to watch as we continue to move forward, because grant monies or soft monies, they don't stay with us for very long.
Thank you. With the increasing focus on academic performance, what is the importance of related arts classes? And do you see the role of related arts in education changing in the future?
Well, first, I think it's extremely important for every student to be involved in something that's co-curricular or extracurricular. The performing arts, whether it be part of the Performing Arts Center during their instructional day, or whether it be at their high school or at their middle school, their elementary school, to be involved in a club or activity that's related to the arts, or the performing arts after school is critically important, because we want to focus on the whole child, not just reading and math, or the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. I can appreciate this question. Do I see the role of the related arts changing? I see that there could be some opportunities, because in the times that we're currently in, we may have to adapt or change as COVID-19 has been just so unprecedented and has changed so many things. However, I personally, professionally, place such value on providing and having those opportunities, because hearing this question makes me think just about all students. We really want to connect students' passion to a pathway. And how can we continue to elevate those opportunities for them to grow? And I think if we ask students, even in our district, currently in Oldham County, how can we continue to grow and get better? Students will tell you. If you ask the teachers who work with them every day, they will say, they will indicate what those needs are and how we can continue to grow. That also leads to innovation and how we can prosper, because our students and our staff that are working on the ground every day extremely hard have such a voice that can help guide that conversation and next steps.
Thank you. How will you determine how this district will return to business as usual in the fall? given the fact that many districts lag behind Oldham in returning to class in person?
Well, first, I think as superintendent, you're the chief advisor to the Board of Education. And it's extremely important to be able to give that advice and advise based upon what might come from the governor's office or from Frankfurt. That certainly has been contentious at best, depending upon so many factors. However, it's the role of the superintendent to make sure that advising is happening so that we can advocate for the school district and support the Board of Education. Certainly, we want to support all of the community. We know what's best practice is we want students in seats, students in classrooms, our teachers working with students. This has been the most trying and most difficult year of our entire career. Certainly, that goes without saying. I think one of the things I think is very positive is that as the school year winds down, things are trending in the right way. We expect to, and that's really my current life in Boone County, is that we expect to open up traditionally. I'm sure that Oldham County is planning to do that. Again, it goes back to team. It goes back to making connections with in this case, would be with the local health department, local health officials, to monitor and to make sure that we're supporting and making those decisions. I think the other thing too is, what we've learned and recognized is just generally speaking, it's so important to be transparent about how decisions are made. How do you make those decisions? What are you basing that on? What's been so challenging, there's so many inputs with COVID-19 and there's so many regulations. And I'll be very honest, met with a group of principals back in the fall, met with them on September the 12th. And on September the 11th or the 10th, I looked at the guidance that the state had put out, and we're making some decisions about small group and supporting small group instruction and having kids come in so we can provide that access and opportunity. Well, one of the principals raised their hand and said, that's not correct. And I had checked it again. It changed, and I didn't know. That's how fast. And it wasn't something that was, litigious in nature, but it was an important detail. So we just had to, we just really had to make some. So I bring that up just to say that we have moved so fast and things have happened so fast. And in addition to that, I'll frame this in one positive piece, is that we talked to our community. We had a council of council meeting with all of our SBDM councils here in a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and really wanted to get input. And certainly that's something I would want to do in Oldham County within the community. But what are the concerns? I think that's, again, voice. That's being able to connect with people, seek to understand. What are their concerns? What have we learned? And I think the other thing that we also framed is, what are some COVID keepers? What are some things that we've learned from this that has allowed us to get better, to really connect with our students, maybe support our staff, and be able to drive that we can hopefully, we all, I'm sure, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know for myself, I'm sure you all do too, this is, starting to be in the rearview mirror, but there are some things that we can use to move forward. And whenever you have adversity quite like this, which is something that we've never seen in our careers, that also tests our resiliency, the growth mindset that we have as an organization, as a district, as a community, because we all have to come together and work together. We want what's best for our students. So I apologize, Mr. Moderator. I got on a passion of mine in terms of appreciate that question about returning to business as usual. I think I answered that question.
That's right. And you had some time to give. That's fine. Dr. Radford, can you please share a recent example where you had to advocate for the benefit of students, even against the stronger voices of staff or community?
I can think of several. That is my challenge. In one area of our school district, we have a very challenging student population. And what I mean is not, let me reframe, it's not the students who are, it is they have such challenging environments where they live. and being able to make in an organization quite like, for example, it's just in a system, not our people. We have really good people. Oldham County has such talented people. You can tell just by being on social media and the time I've spent going through this process. However, change is hard. When you have to make change, it is extremely difficult because maybe you have done that this way for X number of years. So then you have to really illustrate the why, and that's why data is so important, because whenever you have to make change. So I'm trying to lead into a point. We have to make some changes with how we support our students and transporting those students, because it's not we needed to provide more support. And because it has been challenging, in this current example that I'm really having to explain, because I can feel like my passion is really high on this, is we have to get our folks, we've been working to get our folks to understand that, well, this is hard. However, we need to continue to find a way to be able to solve this problem if it's impacting students. And what's really challenging about that is being able to connect with the staff in this instance to support a transportation need that's going to be able to ensure that students are regulated whenever they get home, or that they're regulated and well-equipped whenever they get off the bus and ready for learning. So that is really the issue that we currently are dealing with, and it's really just a space, resource, and staff kind of thing, but we're working really diligently to try to solve that particular problem, and that takes team to be able to do that.
Thank you. A few more to go.
Okay.
As superintendent, how would you ensure a vertically and horizontally articulated curriculum while preserving opportunities for creativity of individual teachers?
Sure. Really good question. Best practice and research really indicates, the standards that Kentucky has set, the Kentucky Core Academic Standards. There's a lot of them, and the depth and the breadth of those standards is quite a bit. And so, research and best practices to identify what's priority, what is essential. So I think, again, as superintendent, if I'm fortunate to get this position, really would be about understanding where the district is in that journey. And I think sometimes, it is a lot of work to be able to identify what are those priority standards, how to bundle those, and then how to have the pacing that allows for really good instruction to happen. You cannot do that in isolation. Again, it has to happen in team. So I think the art and craft of our teachers, that comes into play with them being able to work and teach those standards that we have identified as really important. But that happens through professional learning communities. And that happens with teachers really working together. Again, team. In so many instances, you can give an example of, I could go back to the example that I struggle with this transportation issue on the previous question, but I say that to say this, that team, everyone really working together and pointing in the same direction, that we understand the why, momentum. I'm really big about momentum. And you can build momentum when everyone is connected and has had a voice, such as our teachers. Perhaps there's some teacher leader work that's happened in the district, in Oldham County, to be able to elevate those priority standards. One thing I would note is that journey is not really ever finished. There's always improvement. And sometimes the phrase continuous improvement becomes tiresome to educators. However, that's also part of the process and part of the journey to continue to improve.
What are the most important components you feel of a successful home and school partnership?
I'd first like to go back to the previous question and just say I didn't expand enough about looking at this question. I appreciate having these questions in front of me. is the teachers. I think there's opportunities for teachers to be able to share in PLCs and vertically, and whether it be elementary, middle, and high school, or within their building, what are the practices currently happening where teachers can share their successful practices, strategies, or how we might scaffold that? Because there is such a story that is to be told in every classroom and in every PLC, and how that happens. And I think that's important for us to be able to capture, to be able to celebrate, and to be able to share. So one important note, the most important components of successful home and school partnership. Well, one of the things about the Kentucky Kids Count data, really so many aspects when it measures community involvement, health and wellness, and education, Oldham County is right there at the top, number one in so many categories. I think that just speaks to the commitment, the value that the community puts on education and working together. One of the things that's really important as we look at, one of the passions I have in terms of my experience and moving forward in any organization is to be the best. To be the best for our students, to be the best for our staff. And one of the key ways to do that, in terms of when I see this about home and school partnership, is our youngest learners, early childhood. It's extremely important if we're going to be successful by the time students leave third grade. That tells us a lot about the trajectory of students and the success of them as students and then as adults. So it's really, really important. I think there's such, looking at that data, as I mentioned, the Kentucky Kids Count data, the reason I bring that up is Oldham County has such opportunity to be, based upon the 2020 data that I see, is we're not quite number one. Well, I sure think it can be. And there's such opportunity for that because there's such a high level of commitment. Now that would take more, that would really require reaching out and connecting with the community, city, county leaders, in addition, in partnership with the district for that to happen. But that's just one example of how there's an opportunity there to support students and student learning to benefit us, the district as a whole.
And the final question from our Board of Education, what experience have you had working with a diverse community, including different socioeconomic and educational levels, cultures, races, ethnicities, and expressions of gender?
Well, question 13 really speaks to a lot of my work on a day-to-day basis. I currently work in the schools I currently work in. Their EL population is about 40 or 50% of their student body. We represent in our district, and certainly in this particular cluster of schools, it represents about 40 different languages, presents tremendous amount of challenges. And and the other thing, I think this goes right back to the previous question about challenges, is funding. School districts get very little funding for EL students. It has to come from general fund as compared to other sources for our special populations. In other words, what I mean by that is special ed is funded really at a really high level, but EL students and programs for that are not funded at the same level or same ratio. So it creates some challenges. In addition to that, I think working with a diverse community, it's EL students as an example. It's really important to understand their culture, because how Hispanic students respond to education is very different than students from the Congo, and the value that parents put on education and what they expect of their students. So I think that's really important. That's something that I have really deeply engaged in and learned and even grown myself as a professional educator. And when it comes to diversity, when it comes to equity, when it comes to inclusion, again, if people just know that you care, that goes such a long way in being able to, and you take time to listen. I had a conversation with a parent that was in one of our schools. They were very upset. And this was just this week. And as the conversation is getting ready to end, they were just upset and really concerned about their student. They were concerned about the opportunities. They were concerned about what this is going to do to them and their student as from a learning perspective. And at the end, they just said, "Thank you for listening." That made such a big difference. I really appreciate it. And they felt like, and they even said, the parent even said, "I feel like I've been heard." That is as important as then, and then if we're able to infuse into that action. And we can't respond to everything, but we can connect, we can listen. So again, including different socioeconomic and educational levels, a rising tide raises all ships. And that is, to me, how you're able to really get at diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is we want to elevate everyone, but you have to look through the lens of equity, because what this group might need might be different than this group. So we have to always be mindful about that. And lastly, I would just say that my experience has been on a daily, weekly basis working with some of our most diverse backgrounds in Boone County. So I feel very comfortable speaking and working with any group of educators.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Radford. Now you have a moment for some final remarks, if you like.
Okay. Oldham County, thank you very much. Oldham County has such a rich tradition, such a reputation for excellence. The opportunities that are provided to students. I know some folks who used to live in the community, who are familiar with Oldham County, and going through this process with the Oldham County Board of Education. It really has solidified in my mind the commitment, the passion for the school district as a whole to be the very best it can be. And as a professional educator, I think in going through this journey, it has solidified in my mind in terms of how I feel like my strengths align with what the district is looking for and what the district needs. However, my own passion for doing this work goes back over 20 years ago. And I'm here because of that commitment that's demonstrated on social media, on your website. It further confirmed in hearing the interview process and the entire process. You can just see it. You can feel it in Oldham County. And that's why I want to be here. It is, again, I strongly believe in providing world-class learning opportunities for all kids that's accessible, rigorous, relevant. And Oldham County has been on that path for quite some time. And I think when you balance that, I think the other piece that I did not mention is there are students who are doing really well and they're excelling, and we want to continue for that to happen and make sure that those opportunities and innovation as needs in our students and our economy grow, but we also want to make sure that we elevate those who need the most help and that we're providing that equity. And that's how we do that. That's why I feel like there's such a balance with the background that I have and the opportunity I've had to work with some amazing educators and learn so much that's allowed me the opportunity to be here and just connect with you all. So a heartfelt thank you to the Board of Education and to you all as audience members for allowing me to be here, for listening to my responses to these questions, and I really respect and appreciate the process. I'm very passionate about learning, very passionate about a school district, the organization being the very best it can be, and it takes team to do that. So I can feel the passion and the goosebumps in the back of my neck as I'm talking with you or trying to wrap up, and I'll just end by saying It would be such an honor to be able to be superintendent in Oldham County and to lead this great district. However, from a servant's heart, because it takes team to do that. And so thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Radford.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for your support of Oldham County Schools, and especially audience members and those at home for taking an active part in this process. And a sincere thank you from the school district to our Board of Education for going through this very important process in ensuring the well-being of our school district. So thank you to the board, and good night, everyone.
Thank you.